Right, they didn't fit. And I snapped them. I said, dude, you can have your pedals back. They don't fit. They don't work. Sorry, I was kind of talking in my head here about when I had the Haro yet. Hood Tour Season 7, Episode 30. I think it's either 29 or 30. You'll know when I upload. That's key. I was talking about when I had the Haro yet and how I was trying to turn that, you know, into a modern day custom. You know, talking about that in the Hoffman and don't need to go to Quick Trip or anywhere for lunch because I got lunch at home. I'm gonna eat a couple of hot dogs. Or I might do a burger and a dog. I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know how I said, saying, you know, talking about when I had the Haro and started having to change shit out because it wasn't working the way it was originally set up and blah blah blah. You know, so then Dad ended up finding the Hoffman. You know, so I had the Haro. You know, I rode it for a while and I kept getting tired of having to fucking replace the bearings in the bottom bracket, which is the bearings for your crank. For all the ones that ride bikes every day and, you know, work on their own shit, they know what I'm talking about. You know, and that's why I say, you know what bearings I'm talking about. You know, so then Dad ended up, you know, so I changed, you know, rode the Haro for a while, loved it, miss it, but whatever. Then I started changing out the parts, you know, like when Danny lived next door to me yet, he had bought his brother's BMX bike that he had, or his brother had, you know, the purple one that you guys see if you go back and watch the older videos, that purple bike. And so I had gotten the original bars off that because he ended up scoring a bigger set of bars, you know, a taller set of bars for like hella fucking cheap because I think they're a 10-inch rise. And I think he scored them for like 30 or 40 bucks when a 10-inch rise is like about 100. So that's kind of, you know, on the cheap end to me anyway. I mean, yeah, that's still a little pricey, but you know, 40 bucks isn't bad. And then he gave me his old bars. You know, I had painted them gold, you know, and I was only in the bars. I was only in the bars for like $6 or $8 because I had to buy the paint. you know, paint them because the Harl is green and gold. And then I painted them and whatever, and that was that. And then he gave me the seat, because he changed the seat, which I ran it for a little while and then never ran it again. Oh, they finally shut all the monitors off the fucking things. You know, and then the pedals broke after I put the GT crank in the Harl, because they're just cheap piece of shit pedals. And then I'm going. And then Danny's like, hopefully you find some. You know, I got an idea, but hopefully you find some. He ended up taking the pedals out of his bike and gave them to me. I said, dude, I appreciate the gesture and the offer, I do, but honestly, I don't know if they're gonna work. He's like, well, what do you mean? He said they look like they'll work. I said, they probably won't, because that looks like a smaller spindle for the pedal than what's in yours. And I said, I don't want to take your shit, because now the bike is deemed unrideable because you're, you know, giving me your shit. He's like, I'll figure it out. If I sell the bike, I'll just tell him it's gonna need pedals because it doesn't have any. You know, I was trying to tell him that I didn't want to be reaping the benefits off of him, you know, because that wasn't right. It didn't seem right to me, because I was was really good friends with him and still am. You know, and I didn't want to be reaping the benefits of him, because like I said, it didn't seem fair. And he's like, don't worry about it. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna at least try them, but if they don't work, I'm giving them back. He's like, I don't need them, or, you know, you don't have to give them back. I told him, dude, I'm gonna give him back. All right, whatever, I'm not gonna argue. So then So then I tried them. You know, and I was right. Didn't work. I said, you know, I snapped and I said, hey, dude, pedals ended up not working. I'm gonna give them back. I'm free now. You can come get them if you don't mind. He's like, yeah, I'll be there in a little bit. You can just put them on your porch, and I'll just come get them. Blah blah blah. I was like, dude, I know I got really nothing going on, so I can wait. He's like, okay. So then me and him got to talking. He's like, oh, how do they not fit? I said, like I said, the spindle's too big for, you know, the spindle and the pedals he gave me are too big. And the hole in the crank for the pedals is too small. You know, in the GT crank that was in the Haro, it was for a 1/2-inch pedal, a pedal with a 1/2-inch spindle. And then the pedals that Danny gave me were 9/16. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense why they didn't work then.